Welcome, Topline listeners. I am your co-host, AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath. I am joined today by Asad Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency, and you might recognize that Sam is not here with us today. Asad, Sam sent us a text yesterday, and an ominous text that he said he has to go work on himself.
He's going to go and work on his sleep. Sam's really upset that he doesn't sleep well. So he's taking a few weeks to work on his sleep. He's going to come back. His skin will be fine Johnson's. His aura score will have its own aura. Sam is just going to be in another realm.
It'll be a whole new Sam Jacobs when he comes back. We are going to let Sam tell you where he's been the last few weeks when he comes back. But he'll be very well rested to join us, and we're excited to have him back.
You know, this is the first time, it's episode 97. It's the first time only two people have done Topline.
It's the first time that you and I have ever had a one-on-one conversation, Asad. We always have to have a mediator. Like Asad and I, we get into like huge arguments and debates, and we need someone to cooler heads prevail.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, there's no one to
no filter.
Right.
Yeah, because Sam was the filter the entire show. He
was the one who had to make the call which side is right.
I don't think Sam was the adult in the room. I'm not sure. You're the closest thing we have to an adult. If this was like a board and we needed an independent board member to come in and be the CEO, that would be you.
Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
Customer churn doesn't have to be unpredictable. Totango's Customer Revenue Optimization Suite delivers actionable insights empowering CS and revenue leaders to take strategic, proactive steps to retain and expand their most valuable customers. Take back control and put your revenue on repeat. Visit totango.com to learn more.
You would be
you should make me an independent board member. I'd be a great independent board member.
I think you would be. I think you'd be fantastic independent board member.
Well, I think this is an invitation to join your next board meeting.
Yeah, you. Okay. Well, I'll just add you to the invite, and then what happens when you just show up?
Guys, you didn't know? AJ appointed me. I'm here.
I had my board meeting last week. It was in person. Oh, it was fantastic. In-person board meetings. I mean, it was the first one in 2.5 years. We hadn't had an in-person board meeting in 2.5 years.
So everyone had to fly in for this.
Yeah, and you might be all thinking out there, well, like, AJ, come on, that's not that big of a deal, remote work or whatever. But QuotaPath has raised $70 million. You have investors that have a lot of money on the table.
In the game. Yeah.
So they'll
take a flight for that.
Yeah, to be fair to it, it's always just been timing. One of my board members, she has, I don't think she's on 7 boards, but I am like the only US-based company that she has. She has companies in Norway, in Germany, in Australia, and New Zealand.
Interesting.
Yeah, so she's always on the go.
Does she bring a really interesting international perspective to the board?
Well, one time to make a remote board meeting, she was flying back from Norway, and she had to have a planned layover in Belgium to make my board meeting in the airport. Oh. So I don't think that's an international perspective. But I will say that she's the best board member I've ever had. I think because I'll say that now. It's Rachel Geller. But
don't listen to this, and they're like, he's stack ranking us.
Well, that's true. She's and I've worked with her for 3.5 years, so I feel confident that I can name drop her name. And
it's almost like children. You're not supposed to have favorites. I do think I'm my mom's favorite.
No, but I have a favorite child. No, I have favorite child. We all have favorite children.
Oh my God, you're just like.
Everyone has favorite children, Asad. It's like favorite employees.
I'm pretty sure that I'm my mom's favorite, but I'm not my dad's favorite. I'm up there. I'm in the top 3. He has 3 kids. I'm in the top 3. I'm on
okay, you're in the top 3. That's like that's like a 33% tile that you're going to make.
There's something. Give me the highlight and low light of your board meeting.
Ooh. I think the highlight really was because 1, it was in person. 2, we're coming off of a strong year is the conversation felt so natural and organic around the problems and the challenges that we're trying to solve.
Interesting.
I just promoted, and this can become an organic topic, Meg Rodriguez to Chief of Staff. Ooh. I think we've potentially mentioned that. And so Meg was in the room for the first time, and she's an insane project manager. Mm-hmm. So afterwards, it was just like, here's the 3 things. Here's the Asana board. Here's the Notion board that we're going to use to track. Here's the milestones and the goals.
An Asana and a Notion board.
We have all of the boards.
That's a bit much.
Yeah. We Slack sends to Salesforce, which goes to our BI tool, which goes back to Slack, which then gets ingested. And we do use Asana and Notion, though. That is fun.
A person like you and I, like our type of brains, need a med type of human to like keep us on track. That was your highlight. What was your low light?
That we had to start at 8 a.m. We started the board.
How long is your board meeting?
3 hours.
So why can't it be at noon?
Well, I had to make a flight back I actually changed my flight to make it back for one of my daughter's basketball games that night. Her tournament tipped off, and I want to make it, which she won, but she won yesterday, last night, and she was definitely the MVP of the tournament.
Would it have been less worth it if she didn't win and she wasn't the MVP?
I think
you're just happy to be there.
I think like just watching her improve. So here's the thing. This is like the attachment. We hire athletes sometimes as sales reps. Like I've hired junior Wimbledon winners. You've hired lots of athletes, and that's the coachability. So you could see that. Like that's what I get. Such pride of going over. Like we're driving somewhere, and she'll ask like, "What are the 2 things that I should work on?" Or we'll whiteboard something. And to see her, there's a play that she did yesterday against the zone. She had never really played against the zone. They're in 3rd grade. A play, and I told her when she was coming off the wing, the two players, one on the baseline right next to the hoop, she's going to get double teamed, and she'll have a quick entry pass underneath the hoop. And I'll send you the video, Asid, afterwards. She ran it beautifully afterwards, and so that's just like you have a lot of pride there because
you know this stuff.
How do I know? Don't I look like the supreme athlete? I was like dunking on kids.
You be more athletic than I ever thought. You ran track and stuff. How'd you know basketball?
I actually tore my rotator cuff in college, and I was both Ange and I were very competitive athletes. We're just very competitive people. I think that's the market.
I have a nuance with this athlete direction. So I hire a ton of athletes. I think they're brilliant for certain types of roles. I've learned something.
What's that?
They have to have played a team sport.
Yeah.
I hired some ex-golfers. Horrible. Like, horrible. Like, just ridiculously bad. Or like a tennis player. Like, they're too individualistic. They don't understand the team.
They're lone wolves. They probably were potentially good sellers, but they're like lone wolf mentality,
disaster, right? Like, they just want to annoy you to no extreme. But
the junior Wimbledon winner was a doubles winner.
Perfect.
Yeah. Kellen, shout out to Kellen.
Another human that you had to interact with, and you understand team dynamics, and you understand just their
positioning, self-awareness.
The competitiveness also has to have a level of, I think, humility or ego management, where if you're not number one, you're angry and you want to become number one, but at the same time, you're not toxic and destructive. And if you haven't learned how to do that, it's hard to learn it. And if all you've done is an individual sport, you have no exposure to that, it's really hard to learn.
Well, my other 2 daughters do competitive cheer, which is also very, very team oriented and honestly one of the most intense sports I've ever seen and ever been a part of. So
it is.
Competitive cheer is crazy. But yeah, so long story short, I flew back at the board meeting. I flew back at 1 p.m. to make her tip off. But while my wife was with my other daughter, she actually took her on a cruise for her 12th birthday for some mother-daughter time. Yeah, so I was lone dad, solo dad out there. I know it's really tough for us dads out there.
This cruise is like a dinner cruise or like a
Caribbean? No, like a real cruise, dinner cruise. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was like a business. It was after a conference. It was a dinner cruise. I'm just kidding. It was a Royal Caribbean cruise, Destiny of the Seas, I think it was. That they went on.
I've thought about cruises. I think I'll be very.
You've never been on one?
No. Even though, so when my mother moved from Pakistan to London, back in the day. We don't know how old she is. She hasn't run past 47. She's just stuck there. So we have
I don't know if you're probably serious about this. You really don't know how old she is.
I could not tell you. I could tell you like the decade. Like she's like late 60s, early 70s. Like that's as far as I can tell you. Yeah. But in her youth, whenever that was, they moved from Pakistan to London for some time. And they moved in a ship. It took them like a month to get there or something. And so that's how you would move around back then. I always found it fascinating. I find a lot of peace when I'm around the water. My grandfather was in the Navy, so I grew up really like fascinated with water. But I think I would be claustrophobic on a ship for that long. I have been on a submarine, by the way.
Well, that's not claustrophobic at all. Those are very open, so roomy.
Wild, like an actual,
one. Wait, hold on. You've been on a submarine that's like submerged, or you like took a tour of one at Pearl Harbor?
Okay, submerged, and it's it is like there's no place you can't stand. Like a broad person can't stand.
Why were you on a submarine that was submerged?
I wanted to see one, so my grandfather arranged it, and so I went and saw a submarine. I went inside that.
What country were you in? Canada or Pakistan?
Pakistan. Yeah.
Okay, first off, this is the American in me. And from a geography standpoint, I can't think of any bodies of water that are like butt up against Pakistan.
I live 5 minutes from the sea.
Red Sea? Which sea? Black Sea?
The Arabian Sea.
Okay, I'm sorry, Asid. Everyone out there is like,
which sea?
The Middle East is like very. There's a lot of waters, but not a lot of ocean.
I'm not in the Middle East, dude. That is not the Middle East.
Yeah,
that is South Asia.
South Asia, yes, and but it's just northwest of India, right? I'm in the right ballpark of Pakistan. Yeah.
Yes, next to us. How about that?
Okay. I don't want everyone out there to think I'm a total idiot. They're like, what is this? I'm actually, but okay. So what body of water was the submarine in?
The Arabian Sea.
Okay. But how deep is that? That's a pretty deep.
It went all the way down. It didn't go back and forth too far, but it went all the way down. They wanted to give me the real experience. I then went in like one of those battleships as well. Those are cool.
Aircraft carriers in the U.S. So you have lots of museums with aircraft carriers in San Diego and in other places, and they are massive. They're insane because they're just full cities that are floating.
Cities. People don't realize how big. You know, when people they only have 6, it's like, 6. Those are like 6 little cities floating around.
Little cities that can just move around, do whatever they want, and hundreds of destroyers that are following around as well. But board meeting, okay, you asked so 8 a.m. I think
Sam is going to listen to this. He's like, what are these guys doing? They're talking about everything.
This is the most interesting things we've ever talked about, Austin,
I think this is the best episode ever.
No, the board meeting at 8 a.m. It went pretty fast, but we had a great board dinner the night before, Mediterranean food, and I love that. But that's the hallway conversations, like the conversations that happen one-on-one with your board and your management team. I'm a very open CEO. There's lots of CEOs that are like hide those two from each other. They like won't let the management team talk to their boards. I don't believe that's
Do you get annoyed if your board is reaching out to your management team
without telling me?
Like, can I have this report? Can I look at this? Like, this happens a strange amount of time in the ecosystem.
That should never happen. As a CEO, if you ever let that happen, or if your CEO is letting that happen, they're failing at their job.
Yeah, but it happens. It happens a lot.
I mean,
remember, like, half the ecosystem sits in private equity. In private equity, it's the norm, right? Like, because
that's different. I'm talking about for venture.
But because of that, there's this like comfort with it, right? Like, because a lot of execs who've, let's say, worked in private equity at some point, they'll move over to the venture side, and they already are used to that. They might not know on the venture side, it's not the norm. And so it's surprising how often that happens.
Yeah, I think, look, and also there's regular cadences. When we first started with stage 2, they had like a pipe review conversation because we were like 6 people. But definitely there's something to dig into on reporting. I sometimes get a little like anxious if the board asks me for something and I didn't catch it. Like, here's a good example, and this wasn't a big deal. One of our board members just asked if they were like, oh, I forgot to ask this during the meeting and I didn't see it in the deck or the financials. Are you doing an audit this year? I was like, which is required of us to do. And so I was just a miss on my part. And I was like, oh yeah, I apologize. Here's the details on that. But outside of that, I feel like if you're I just know the business so well right now.
What are you noticing in terms of investor sentiment, mindset? Because I think they also had a really rough couple of years, right? Like,
yeah,
they got hit hard as well because they're all running businesses and they have their targets and their incentive is tied to there's everything that we all go through, they go through internally as well. And so the last couple of years were really rough for a lot of them. And you could feel that as you would watch investors on panels or talk to them one-on-one. You could feel that they were also really feeling it. And that was then playing out in a lot of the board meetings because they were coming in with a net negative mindset or sentiment about everything. And so a lot of the advice and strategies were very extremely defensive strategies. They tilted aggressively onto the defensive side. So have you noticed a shift now as things are improving?
I think you're right in terms of there's a little bit of a lagging indicator where entrepreneurs were feeling it in their business, but didn't know how to bring it up, the challenges that they might be having. And then when they got out, that finally all of the founders and CEOs were saying, like, here are our challenges. And this isn't true for everyone, but certainly in like the go-to-market space and MarTech and SaaS in general, I think there's still the unicorns we can all point to, the companies that have just blown up. But in general, most of their investments were probably feeling some sort of pain, probably around retention and churn. And that's a lagging indicator. And so that I felt the pressure, but didn't hear it or see it the same way somewhat from my board. And then it felt like a lagging. And then you're right. The defensiveness is, I would actually say, it's a really challenging spot to be in as an investor, because you don't want to be passive aggressive, but you know the data that you know about your other companies, but you don't want to give your companies an out by sharing that data fully and transparently. And you're just used to not sharing that data anyway. It's also just confidential in general. And so that causes a lot of conflict with a lot of CEOs and founders. I think a lot of investors could do better about being a little bit more open and showing a little bit more humility at times. And it doesn't always work like that. And it's also, it's also on the founder and the entrepreneur to be more objective and manage their own emotions in a way that doesn't allow them to feel like they're like getting anxious. And I say this is like me projecting. I feel like I've gone through this.
You could feel it with founders as they would come out of these board meetings. And even if they were going in with results that we would look at as operators and say, okay, like for where we are in the down cycle, 2023 tech recession, this isn't all that bad. And then they would come out of a board meeting and it was like, they were in a UFC match with two heavyweight champions and they just got beaten for 5 rounds. Like it was they would come out, their shoulders were hunched, their energy was depleted. And what was interesting was the hangover of that lasts 4 days, right? Like it's not easy to just like brush it off and back to normal. And so the reverb is felt across the organization for many days. That's why like board meetings, I always find them interesting because of course, there are moments where you should have to have really difficult conversations, and the purpose of the board meeting is it's a fiduciary responsibility. So you have to cover everything. It's dry, it's long, all of that's there. But we underappreciate the reverb that's felt across the organization. That's why I think when people do their board meetings on Friday afternoon, I think that's the best time to do a board meeting because you have the weekend to get out of the mindset of wherever you are. A Monday morning board meeting to me is a board meeting where if you're flying as an organization, do it whenever you want. But if your board meeting is going to have anything except like, well done, amazing, you're killing it, everything's great, you tell us how we can help you. If that's not the board meeting you're going to have, do it on Friday afternoon. That way you have the weekend to get out of that mindset.
Right, well, I've never done a Friday or a Monday board meeting. I've always done Wednesday or Thursday. But here's the thing, Monday board meetings don't exist, or I don't think they exist.
Because investors don't work Mondays?
No, they do work Mondays, but they're all internal. It's that's where they do their investment committee meetings, and they have like they wouldn't spend time with their portcos.
Fridays are golf.
Fridays are golf. I actually would. Yeah, I'd be curious if you're out there and you have board meetings on Fridays. We'd love to hear from you. I mean, seriously, do those Friday board meetings.
As somebody who's thought about this a lot, I'm telling you, that's the move. Do it on Friday afternoon.
Do Saturday morning. Do it 7 a.m. The move is, and this actually did happen. I'll tell you it. So the meeting was 8 a.m. One of our investors actually couldn't make it. He was on the West Coast, so it was 6 a.m. for him. And then I had a couple investors who were running late. They gave me a heads up, and they were like, okay to start. But then, the move is starting a board meeting without everyone there. So had to do that as well, which again, I wouldn't have done it if the board member wasn't like, go ahead and get started. So.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay. Today I have a bunch of things I want to talk to you about. Today is a hang. This is a new style of episode. And so I'm going to share things with you, and I want to get your reactions to this.
I almost did this episode from my couch over there. I felt like this was going to be much more casual, like,
like pop an edible, chill, light candle.
Where's your vape pen?
Okay. So I'm going to pick randomly off a list of topics that I'd written. The first one that I want to talk to you about is something I've been thinking about, which is Outbound is not dead at all. At all. There's nothing wrong with Outbound. Okay, so here's my thesis. The thesis is we seem to think that Outbound is supposed to work for more people than it's supposed to work, is my premise here. So if you look back into the history of sales, are you telling me it's harder today than when there was no yellow pages, meaning there was no centralized database where all the companies were with their phone numbers and you had to go out into the real world and find companies and get their contact information and go into their offices? It's not harder than that. Okay, so there was definitely a point in history where Outbound was hard. Then I look at these conversion rates that people talk about, the averaged out conversion rates. And I look back to my cold calling career where I was, as a student, I was doing a bunch of jobs where I was working at, not great organizations selling not great products. I had worse conversion rates than that. I didn't have it's not like back in the day, you would make 10 calls and 9 people would talk to you and 7 would buy from you. That just never was a world, right? So me coming up, let's say 15 years ago, connect rates, response rates, wins, etc., was selling something that didn't have great product market fit. It was kind of what it is like today when you're selling something that doesn't have great product market fit. Kyle used to work for a company that used to sell tickets and conferencing, etc. And I would argue that it has changed a little bit, but it's not like his life was 1,000 times easier back then as an outbound leader versus now. And so then we click into today, and there's this narrative around how Outbound is dead. No one's picking up the phones. Conversion rates have dropped. No one responds to emails. It is a disaster. Outbound's dead. Let's now do inbound-led outbound or nearbound or partner-led growth or this, that, the other, right? And you actually think about it, and it's like, what has actually changed? What has changed is the number of companies that are out there. And only a small % of those companies build products that I think will work when you're doing outbound, because outbound only works if you are solving a problem with a solution that has product market fit. And if you don't have great product market fit, it's not supposed to work amazingly. I don't know why we've told ourselves it should be great. It's not supposed to be great. It never was. It never will be. We just have a lot more companies that sit in that bucket of having built things that have yet to find product market fit. Some will never find it. And so the volume of people that are saying it's just not working is much higher. And of course, things have happened that has evolved outbound. There's mass emailing in a way that there wasn't before. Sure. Just like how back in the day you would cold call and people would pick up because they were sitting in their office a lot more than now when you call their cells. Sure, changes have happened. But then when you talk to a company that has great product market fit, outbound's working brilliantly for them. No problem. Outbound's great. And you could say, oh, if you have great product market fit, you shouldn't have to do outbound. Of course you should. You need the channel. Why not? And so my premise here is, it is working just as well as it was always working. And it's supposed to work that well for a small subset of companies that have great product market fit. And that group of companies, there's more of them now than there ever was before. And for them, outbound is perfect. For everybody else, it's not. And there's a much larger group of people that sit in that bucket, and they're crying and they're loud and they're complaining about everything from outreach to the weather being the reason why it doesn't work. But it was just never meant to work for them because they have yet to unlock the thing they're supposed to unlock. So outbound is not dead. It's just fine.
Interesting argument. Let me tell you why you're wrong. I love that you had like 7 topics in the docket, and then this was the last one, and there was no context. It literally just said Outbound is not dead, and then I commented, yes, it is, and then here we are.
Like, this is the topic. This is it. Why talk about anything else?
You just latched onto this. I think we both were in sales roles where we had to do cold calls, and I remember the connect rate of 1 out of 11. If I could make 11 cold calls and I had 1 connection, then that would be a game changer.
That was wild.
1 out of 11, just a phone call, just like a cold call. 1 out of 11 people picked up. Now it's 1 out of 10,000. I'm sure. I'm not even sure.
But is it? Like, that's what I'm saying. Is it? Like, if you're selling the right thing. Okay, let's take an example. Let's say you are selling free money. You are just giving out money. But back to ZERP. We just give money. There was a company in Canada that would give money to e-commerce companies with like this automated due diligence process. They called it the 10-minute term sheet. And Outbound worked perfectly for that.
Main Street did this as well. It was like part of a tax benefit. It still is in the U.S. that R&D tax, you get money up. They were giving money up front for your tax credits. So if you're doing
like this type of stuff,
I don't think that actually even makes it worse.
Because people there, they're like, it's working just fine for us.
Okay, so let's just go back to what I was saying, where like when someone picked up, you were thinking about your unique value prop, your differentiator, and how you're doing. And the playbook was really clear at that time. Like, you use Jigsaw. Did you ever use Jigsaw, Asid? No. You don't even know what that is. It was I think Salesforce bought it, but it was like you would put in a contact information and it would give you a contact credit that you could use anywhere. So it was like this marketplace of contacts.
Interesting. That's interesting.
It was the very first date. I don't know if it was the very first, but in 2006, it was like very early to the date.
I had a tool that you could put any phone number you wanted to show up when you.
Yeah, I had that too. Spoofing. I loved it.
I used that on my friends, so I was their dad like 1,000 times.
We closed LA Galaxy because we called the guy's office phone with his cell phone. We used.
That's amazing.
We found his cell phone number.
Did you ever call a company and basically call somebody that you were not trying to get in touch with, act like an internal employee, and ask them to transfer you to somebody else?
No, but my wife has had that happen in her childcare center, and that she like freaked out when that happened. Barely, like there's some really. I mean, I wouldn't do the spoofing.
There were some wild tactics people did.
Oh, super wild tactics. So look, back at that time, you would have this unique value prop, and the signal to noise ratio was much, much, much lower. So it was on you, like you were the differentiator, right? And so today you have way less at bats to be the unique differentiator. I'm talking about the seller. Like, we'll get to the product market fit argument that you made here in a second, and that's the whole point of like a great outbound.
But you have these mass calling machines where you call 10,000 people at the same time. Whoever picks up, you get connected to. So like, I get what you're saying. The volume of outreach has increased, but our ability to do volume has increased as well. And so sure, there was this one moment in time where the first 100 people on outreach and sales loft had an edge and all of that. So that's true. Sure, fine. But that was a blip. It was a moment. Like, it wasn't really a period of time. It was a small moment. But when you look at history in buckets of 10 years, for most of those 10 years, it has been similarly difficult for different reasons, is the premise.
Yeah, I think that there is some semblance of that. I haven't even gotten to the argument of why you're wrong yet. So let me actually hit to the heart of it. You're wrong because outbound isn't how you scale a company today with product market fit. It's just not. And I know this. Like, you have so many different nearbound and partner-led growth. And you literally just said it. Like, and Satya says this. Like, if you built a company with just a sales team as your only distribution model, you're going to fail.
I think
I'll make that declarative right now.
That is so bananas, because, okay, fine. All of this nearbound, this, that, and the other, sure, whatever, right? That you have to have different channels and different strategies. But I would say the great companies of today and the great companies of tomorrow will have outbound as one of their channels. And for them, it'll work just fine.
Will they though? Will they have outbound or will they have a sales team?
Will they have inbound-led outbound instead? Like, why not?
No, they just have a strong sales team. Look, Austin, it's actually pretty straightforward. It's simple. If I could take a group of people and make them the best sellers possible. Am I going to be spending time also having them prospect, having them do outbound? No. If I feel like I've created and cracked the nut because I have severe product market fit and I have a name and I've built a brand marketing, right? And I've created a partner strategy that are bringing those leads to me. This is just the classic situation where you're in the middle of the funnel.
Let me click into this a little bit. I think the problem with your thinking is you're thinking small in terms of the size of the business that you're thinking of creating. I think if you look at some of the largest, biggest outcomes in the world, you have to click into companies like Google and Microsoft and Amazon.
And yes, those are all on the backbone of outbound sales teams.
They have
right?
outbound. They have outbound.
They have it, but come on, Google isn't built from an outbound sales team.
MongoDB, look at Zscaler, look at all of these companies that were SaaS, B2B software, successful organizations, implemented the John McMahon protocols, and their AEs would prospect. And I'm not saying that a company with extreme product market fit won't have the advantage of inbound and partners that will throw them leads and all of that. That's great. That will be there. But they will also remember that to achieve the absolute size that they're going for, to capture the market, you have to go into new verticals, new markets, new places where the benefits of that extreme product market fit are not going to give you a flow of business flying your way. And so you have to have an outbound muscle. And the argument isn't should they do it or should they not. I think anyone who wants to win-win is going to have to do it, unless you are selling some super transactional thing or there's edge cases. But most B2B products, if you want to win your category, you're going to have to do outbound. The point is, when they do it, it works fine as long as they have product market fit. And those who don't have product market fit get kicked in the teeth the way they have historically gotten kicked in the teeth.
Sure.
Nothing has changed there, just the number of people and social media that gives them a loud voice. And then people that have some interest in coming and latching onto that frustration by saying, actually, the world is changing. Predictable revenue doesn't work. New thing, inbound-led outbound. That's the solution. And here I built something to sell to you for inbound-led outbound. Buy my thing. Or nearbound. Nearbound is the way to go. And please come to my conference. Or partnership-led growth.
Okay, hold on.
Buy my thing. It's like,
what is inbound-led outbound? That's not a thing. What is that?
That was the Adam Robinson thing, right? Like inbound-led outbound is the answer to predictable revenue. And how it works is that you create a founder brand and then everybody comes to you and then you get your sales team to talk to them and this is the solution. Buy my thing. Buy our B2B SL data.
I'm super confused. I don't know what the outbound is in that. What's the outbound
There's
motion?
No outbound. That's why it's crazy. It's like, sorry, dude, that's called inbound. That's not inbound-led outbound.
Think, at the end of the day, Asid, I totally agree with you in just general. I mean, like we have an outbound motion at QuotaPath. It's one of our channels. I don't think it's the winning channel for us long term. I would much rather my sellers, just the only sellers that I have on the sales team, be completely focused on the strategic and consultative part of the customer experience and journey, not on having to pick up the phone. And maybe I'm wrong. Look, if you're out there right now and you're like, AJ has this completely wrong, like, please message me.
Please let AJ know. Please go to AJ.
I'm sure. By the way, I do get this, like when I make these declarative statements during Topline, and always without fail, at least one or two people will reach out to me about this and tell me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you
I love that. That's amazing.
You don't get that? I get
a lot of like, I agree with you. I get a lot of
right.
I'm not joking. I get an I agree with you a couple of times a week. I'm joking. I've never heard, and no one has ever come to me and said I disagree with you. Probably because they know that I'll just start debating them right then. They're like, this guy is going to destroy our day. Let's just let him be.
All right.
Are you being paid what you're worth? Pavilion's compensation report has become an industry standard for go-to-market leaders to benchmark their compensation, equity, and other employment terms. We're refreshing the report for 2025 and need your input. To get early access to the results, take the anonymous survey at joinpavilion.com/comp. That's COMP, or click the link in the show notes.
You had some other great topics that I want to get to.
Moving on to
just go like
This is amazing.
Every 3 months we bring up the Outbound scenario, and I actually really appreciate it.
This a lot, though. It's been in my head. It's one of the thoughts I have that I think most people disagree with. So I enjoy that thought the most. The other thing I've been thinking about is the shift in status symbols. And so over the last year or so, we've seen a bunch of these old status symbols in tech are no longer status providing. So an example of that is when I started in tech, I would go to companies, and there was this really interesting moment, AJ. When I started, we didn't have a big tech practice. Media was much larger than tech, actually. And I cut my teeth in insurance recruitment, which is very hard.
That's very tough.
Commercial insurance. That was really hard recruitment. That was like really.
Can we do a cold call pitch right now? I want you to pitch me commercial insurance right now.
Why would I cold call someone?
No, all right. Because Outbound isn't dead, right?
I wasn't a sales guy.
Pitch me why I should use commercial insurance.
No. I used to have to headhunt commercial insurance folks away from a commercial insurance company.
Oh my God.
Which was uniquely difficult because they have a book of business. So it's you manage the accounts you bring in. And so basically every year you start with your base of accounts and add to it.
Yeah, so why would you leave if you have a base?
Why would you leave, right? Yeah, like you've got this base you've built over 6 years, and most companies that wanted them were not willing to give a massive incentive to get them, which made it very, very difficult. That was a hard thing.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did it because I think I learned a lot of the tactics on how to position and market roles and companies really effectively by doing this thing where I would get kicked in the teeth every morning. That said, when we started working with tech, and specifically when SaaS became a part of our practice, something interesting happened, which is for the first time, people were afraid to talk about revenue when I would go into their organizations. Be like, tell me about your business, this and that. How much revenue do you do? And they would get like weirded out. They're like, can't tell you about revenue. I have 150 employees. And it's like, what's your revenue? And they're like, no, we don't talk about revenue. It's like, what do you mean you don't talk about revenue? We raised 150 million. We have 150 employees. That should be enough. And it's like, oh, interesting. Okay. So the number of employees was the first or second thing they would mention when I would ask them about revenue, and then would be fundraise, right? Those would be your top two. And so there was a lot of status associated with the amount of employees you have. Whereas now if you look at Cursor and a bunch of these other AI companies, it's all about how far can you get with the fewest amount of employees possible. And we've seen this wave across our ecosystem where amongst ourselves, we're also talking about, I want the leanest team possible for the most amount of revenue that team can do. I want to solve that problem, right? So that's gone. The other one that I think is really interesting is, triple, double, right? Like that was every
goal. You added another double to that whole
Wasn't
thing.
It supposed to be double?
No, this was back in, I think, I want to say Excel actually coined this term. Triple,
1, 2, 3, 3, 9.
Bessemer did it. I know it's Bessemer now. Yeah, triple, double is what it was. Not
do the math, AJ. It doesn't math at triple, double.
Well, you need another double. Back in the day, like back in 2005.
1 to 3 million.
Okay.
3 to 9.
Okay.
9 to 18.
18 to 36.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the path to 100, no?
Oh, no, I think that was added on. No, it was triple, double when it was first started and coined.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know it was. Because it was a big mantra at Trendkite.
Google this while I tell you about this point.
Google it. By the way, I don't Google anything. I only use ChatGPT on the browser. And
I think it was actually triple, double.
We got 5 leads from ChatGPT this week.
Wow.
Isn't that fun? Yeah, shout out to my marketing team. All right, go ahead.
So let me go back to this. So there's no status from the number of employees you have unless it's an insanely low number of employees for the amount of revenue you're doing. Secondly, this triple, double. If you were doing that, you were A+. If you had had your first triple, you now were potentially able to do the rest of this. And that was attractive to investors and that was attractive to employees. We tripled revenue last year. We're going to triple it again this year. Okay. So this triple, double was very status providing. Your first triple would help you raise a round, hire a bunch of employees. If you got your second triple, now you are in rarefied air and you have the potential to be one of these few companies that can get somewhere. Now, if you tell somebody I tripled revenue last year, they think you're a loser. Now we're hearing about 1 to 5, 1 to 8. I'm working with somebody that went from 1 to 6. The triple, double seems to have no longer any status associated with it. The status is with, I have just 8x'd my revenue. Clay, 10x, 6x. Like, that is wild. And so general thoughts on this shift we're noticing in the market in terms of where status is where you can gain status, or the things you can gain status from.
So you don't all send me a LinkedIn message and correct me. Asid is correct. It is T2 D3. That is. Yeah. Everyone was just like,
had to just like clarify T2 D3 means triple, double.
You're right. 100% right. I can't believe I messed that up. Well, I never got to that last double. So Trendkite was triple, double, and then is there something for 50% or something? or 25%?
So AJ, you actually would have seen that year where you had 50%. Now you're out, right? Like, you're out of the game.
Yeah, we were out. We sold that year.
You can't like get back on it. This is all about people that can execute all 5 stages, right? But when you were on the first 2 or 3 stages,
we were talking about it all the time.
You're chest out. You're the one.
Yeah,
you're the man.
No, so it's 100% true. The status symbol was the office. The status symbol was the ping pong table. The status symbol was the awesome parties at the end of the month. The status symbol was you could walk around Austin and say, I was a part of Trendkite. That was a status symbol, and it was that was awesome. But that, like today's status symbols, the status symbol were the equity that you earned, or the perks that you got, or the various like half day Fridays, or other things. I mean, I think half day Fridays is still very sought after, or 4-day work weeks.
Soft companies.
I wanted to talk to you about that because that ties into the other point that you made about
another one, right? Where like you would think about work-life balance, half day Fridays, DEI, like all of these things when a company
just switched early, just because there's, especially with the new office, White House, but like I don't think people have just switched their minds all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, that's out the door, we don't have to talk about that.
There's been a slow shift, right? DEI is like the last thing that shifted, but during the downturn there was a clean and clear shift around the amount a company works. Like there are a lot of people that are optimizing for 6 days a week in office. We've spoken about this on the pod where Keith Roboy had a bunch of companies that were doing this, 6 days in the office, 12 hours a day.
They had great Glassdoor reviews from that as well. But no, look, your point, I was really like one of the highlights for me in the boardroom was looking at our financial plan from last quarter last year and just seeing all the green. But the biggest one was headcount. We stayed flat in headcount, 47 employees, and we did it. And it doesn't mean we didn't hire. I think we had 7 hires that started last year. We just had to look at our team and just make the trade-offs of just like where do we need to up level and where do we think about it. That was a status symbol for me, and I 100% agree. I'm like, let's do it again. Let's grow another 60% and keep our headcount where it is.
What do you think is, can you project out a bit? Like, do you think there's some more shifts that are going to happen in terms of where we derive status from versus where we will in the future?
Well, it still needs to go back to exits. I think the equity piece of it is the one that I would focus in on. I actually was disappointed. I mean, it's the right stat to look at. I was hoping equity would have become more meaningful and rebounded a little bit, but it feels like you're right. It's not. And the reason for that is not because of, I want everyone to just have as much equity. It's because when you value equity and you have an exit, you take that money and you invest it elsewhere. Mm-hmm. We've like as founders and CEOs, we've gone and invested. I'm an angel in lots of companies, but there are employees that make enough that they become angels and invest, and that's what like a mark of like a high performing.
I think that's really interesting. To give the listeners some context, one of the things we were looking at is the shift in startup equity and the belief in it from both the employer and the employees. And the stats that we found are that companies had granted 37% less equity. It dropped down from 2022 to 2023 during the downturn. It's stabilized now at that level. And there's a 48% drop in employees exercising their options. So on both sides, there's less of this belief. The premise I have with this is that if you go back into the history of the tech ecosystem, Fairchild Semiconductor was a really important company. And it was 8 founders who left the company they were working at and they wanted to own a piece of what they were building, and they started this business. They wanted to give employees equity, from what I understand, but they were unable to, because part of the founding story of Fairchild was that there was another organization that was part of it, and they had blocked this because there would be an implication for them to have to do it for their organization with hundreds of employees, maybe thousands of employees, and they didn't want to do it. From Fairchild, though, came out the people that created Intel, and they then had none of the shackles, and they gave startup equity. And Arthur Rock was like one of the most important figures in the evolution of the Silicon Valley ecosystem. He was a big proponent of startup equity for employees. So it's like, why do you give it? Well, it comes down to what's the reason to join a startup? Like, why would you do it? There's easier things to do.
The risk reward.
Well, there's the ability to have impact more so than in a blue chip company. There's the ability to grow more, business acumen and career ladder progression. And there's equity. You get to own a piece of the pie. And if you pick right and the company works out, and only 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 will, but if you do, this can be life changing for you. And then, as you said, there is a reverb of that across the ecosystem because those people become active angel investors. You had your outcome and you invested in 30, 40 startups after that, right? And so that, I think, is really an important part of the ecosystem. If you take any one of these 3 pillars away, the impact or the growth or the equity, what I think is going to happen is over time, less people will want to go into the startup ecosystem because you need all 3 for it to make sense for them. And what I'm noticing is that in the short term, the employees and investors are okay with this because they can keep more of it for themselves. But in the long term, there just won't be enough great people coming to these organizations unless this is addressed. I don't know if it's addressed from employers. I think it actually has to be employees asking for it more, and it starts with becoming more aware of it. And then understanding ZERP happened, everybody got kicked in the teeth. It doesn't mean that ZERP is the standard. And so if you are playing this game, if you are romantic or pirates, then you should probably try to get some equity. It won't always work out, but when it does, it can change your life and your children's lives.
Some of the greatest innovators and entrepreneurs ever have come out of companies where they weren't founders and they made enough money that they gave them their financial freedom to be able to do that. And I think about the PayPal mafia. I mean, Elon Musk wasn't a co-founder of PayPal. His company was bought. It was like an early version of Venmo, basically.
Yes.
And then that he was on the executive team, of course, and he was, I think, the only one that didn't want to sell PayPal when PayPal did sell for a couple billion to eBay. Is that who they sold to?
eBay,
eBay.
And I think he'd only made like 100-something million from it. So it wasn't like the most life-changing outcome. But then he created Twitter.
It's just $100 million isn't a life-changing outcome.
It's great. Like, it's amazing. But it like in the context of Elon Musk, right? Like, he's gone on to have a couple of $100 billion. So it wasn't like that huge, but from there he had money to see.
Well, he invested like 50. He took half of it, invested it in Tesla, SpaceX, and others. Like, he's definitely
he invested all of it.
Was it all of it?
Every last dollar. There's a story that he paid his rent through a credit card. That's probably hyperbole, but the point is he invested literally every dollar back.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm going to be doing that after Quotapath in the next world. I think going back to the point on status, I agree. And I think as founders and CEOs, like, we need to be thinking about that as much as we're thinking about the operations in our business, because at the end of the day, our goal is to recruit really great people and continue to do it. So that's not to say that here's where I think is wrong. Like, people and culture and values are still at the heart of every organization. People still want to work for an organization that has a great mission and vision of the organization. And that's a status symbol. I mean, sure, like OpenAI,
Absolutely.
Who probably has like the mission and vision.
I think values matter less, to be honest. I think mission matters a lot more. Like, I think mission is probably underappreciated how important that is, because as a headhunter, people are very attracted to the problem the company is solving and what are they going for here. So I think that matters a lot. I don't think values matter all that much. I think we have for so long come up with such silly values, such ridiculous ones, driven by, I don't know, like this. When you open these company pages and you read their values, when is it ever interesting? It's like, it's hyper transparent and it's crazy. And so I don't think people care because I think they genuinely don't believe them. But some companies have great values and live by them, and sure, for them that might be an edge. But for most, I don't think people care. But I think mission really matters. You know what I do think another thing that status is going to shift towards is, but in our startup ecosystem, because of how we fund these companies, which is amazing, like the invention of venture capital is underappreciated in terms of how much it has improved the quality of life across the world, right? Because it enabled founders to create these businesses that have gone on to change the world. So it's a really important part of the ecosystem. But then it has an inherent problem in it, which is that they do at some point have to make their money. And so there's this baked-in thing about exits and outcomes. And what it has led to, I think, is a deficiency of people doing their life's work in tech. It's all about my outcome. It's all about my exit. I'm building to sell. In other industries, actually, you see a lot more of the life's work type of approach. And I think the life's work approach is gaining a little bit more momentum now. And I think in the coming years, there will be more people that say, I don't care about the end. I'm not going to sell this. I'm just going to do this for as long as I can do it. And they won't be the majority, but they won't be a silent, non-existent minority either.
Yeah, I agree. I think in our household, we have a little bit of a flavor of both because my wife owns a childcare center, which is, I think, a very life's work type of business that she'll own for years to come. And I have a venture-backed business. And so, like, I think there's an area where we have similar problems as businesses, but probably think about the outcomes quite differently. Very differently. So,
I think about Mr. Beast, who I think is fascinating. People underappreciate him as like...
He's getting a lot of hate right now because of the NBA All-Star game. I think I
didn't watch that. But
I don't think anyone did. It was terrible.
If you listen to him, he has this like unreasonable level of commitment to his mission, which I think is very attractive. And the thing he talks about, he's like, I made some money on a video, and I take that money and then a little bit more and I put it in the next video. And he just is always doing this thing. And if you think about his business, there's no recurring revenue. He has to raise sponsorship ad dollars and invest it in a video, and the video might hit, might not. And then he does it again and does it again and does it again. And then he goes and creates a chocolate company because chocolates chocolates don't have any recurring revenue or anything of that sort. And it's like, he's not optimizing for the P&L that gets the exit. He's optimizing for the thing he just wants to keep doing. And I think he's actually quite inspirational to young people. So you will see this young cohort starting to think about, wow, I want to be like him. Like, that's really cool. And so you have an example of somebody that's achieved greatness in a different way at a scale that I think is massive. And I think that'll have an interesting...
Do you think you're doing like your life's work?
I've always said that. Yeah, like this is it. Like whatever version of this problem there's out there, I'm going to be doing this, and I won't do anything other than this. Like, I'm not going to create a software. I'm not going to have an investment fund. ST is not going to have a venture arm, cryptocurrency, marketplace, software, nothing. We're craftspeople, and we're going to do whatever version of this is out there. We'll be doing that. And we think there's a lot of value to be created by doing that and captured by doing that as well. And that's the bet we're making, and we're excited to make it. And that's okay. And so I don't care about the enterprise value. I don't care that I don't have recurring revenue. I kind of like it. I'm a gangster. It doesn't scare me. Everybody's like, needs the recurring revenue to go to bed at night. And I don't care. I'll go find more revenue.
What a comment. I don't care. Don't care about your problems. I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah. Okay. We are coming up on time.
Look at that.
And so
If you thought, oh, two people can't be great on this show, they won't have enough to talk about or discuss.
I think we've barely gotten through the docket. Okay, I want to do two things. I want to just share something with you because I think it's fascinating, but also the listeners need to know this. And I think it'll be fascinating for them. And then we'll end the episode.
Okay.
If we have a few minutes. Okay. So you know how Klarna was the first company that came out and said, we're using AI to automate customer support. And I think there was some stat like how they didn't have to hire 700 people because of it, or they'd automated a 700-person function, something like that. There was something massive there. And then they were the company that came out and said, hey, by the way, we just churned from Workday and Salesforce, and do-it-yourself AI is the way to go. And it was really interesting. And for a company that's on the IPO roadshow, I think the marketing muscles of this CEO were quite prolific. But he just came out with a tweet that I thought was just fun. He said, we just had an epiphany. In a world of AI, nothing will be as valuable as humans. We're going to kick off work to allow Klarna to become the best at offering humans to speak to. And I just thought that was interesting.
Wait, allowing humans to what?
Allowing best at offering a human to speak to. So what he means is, in the world of all of this automation, my edge is that when you call people up, you don't talk to a human being.
I think that's...
Isn't that fascinating?
That's interesting. I will shout out to this. We're not doing shout outs or wins of the week this week, but I will give a shout out to USAA, who's the best talk to human company I've ever come in contact with. American Express is pretty good, but it's American Express.
I think Sam would divorce you at this point. I don't think he's hated anyone more than American Express.
Well, okay. You pay for... Yeah, I haven't had issues with American Express. But USA is phenomenal at every service they have. Every service they have that I've used, and I've used them and I've been accustomed. My dad was in the Navy, so that's how I'm it's a military banking for military family members, et cetera, but I have insurance, home, I have banking through them, and they are first class in terms of services, but it's human, right? They're just anything, even in their chat. That's what's interesting, Asad, is that they have a chat. It's easy to find. And when you chat, it's instant, and it's also very humanized right from the front, right from the get-go. It's not. Now, I don't know in their world of AI if they've changed this at all, but that's one area where I would say that we are. I'm glad someone's reversed course and saying it out loud. And it's funny. It's one of the companies that was like, no, we're all in.
With this, right?
And we're like, oh my God. Maybe they didn't like what they saw when they lifted under the hood. They're like, no, this is not good.
Maybe customers are happier when they have humans with human imperfections. I do think that the customer service use case is the most interesting use case. Another fact, as we end this, that I think is interesting about customer service is that a lot of the conversation early on during this AI shift was how AI is an equalizing function in an organization. And there was a study in MIT that showed that if you gave AI to novice customer service professionals, it increased their productivity by, I believe, 30-something%. Double the product, 30-something%. But if you gave it to experienced reps, it did nothing for them. And that was really interesting. And so people were like, it's an equalizer. But what you're noticing right now is that there's also now research that's showing that it might not just be an equalizer the way we thought about it. So there was a study in the University of Chicago where they ran an experiment and they gave AI, an AI tool to sophisticated and non-sophisticated investors. And they made the AI tool look at call transcripts from companies that had just released their earnings. And they had to use the AI to invest $1,000 and see what happens with it. And the sophisticated investor had a 10% increase, whereas the non-sophisticated investor had a 2% increase. Because of it. There was another study in MIT that showed that during materials discovery, an AI program helped top performers double their productivity. But for the bottom 1/3, it did nothing. And so it's kind of interesting, as we are going through these shifts, how a lot of the early lessons are now being looked at again, and some are not holding as true as before.
Which we have to give a shout out, or at least mention the Benedict Evans article on deep research. It's very good. I skimmed it before this conversation. We didn't talk about it, but it actually talks a little bit about this in terms of like the drawbacks on the LLM and specifically deep research, and computers versus LLM, and like where you actually get productivity gains around.
It's really interesting because he's very absolutist about it. The premise of his
it was very 1 or 0.
Yeah, he's like, if it can't be 100% right, then I can't use it at all because I'm an analyst, I'm a researcher, and so it's got zero utility for me. And it reminds me of how people think about self-drive as like driverless cars, I guess, is if the rate of accidents is better than humans, but it's not perfect, we can't tolerate the self-drive.
The perfect's not possible. It's not, and that's what he says in the article. 100% even, he actually makes a comment like if that's even a reality of the thing, it's not possible.
Well, I think the counter to him is that not everybody is doing your job. Meaning that if you're a salesperson and you're going about to meet a client and you need to understand the competitive landscape of their industry, I think it's good enough for you at that point. And using it versus not using it, the person using it has the alpha there. And so it's just different professions have different levels of use cases. Okay. Yeah. So now, as we officially wrap this up, the question for you today, my friend, is what's a recent fail that you had? And what is a lesson that you learned from this fail?
I actually was thinking about this during our conversation. I have a very tactical one that might hopefully make someone think out there because it's very real, and it's changed my week this week, figuring this out last week. So I have a productivity planner that I use every day because I write things down because I'm old school. I said, don't make fun of me for that. And the QuotaPath actually, as Swag, set out productivity planners to the company last year. They're quarterly ones. And I've been using
internal employees.
Yeah, internal. And I've been using it. I really liked it. And so I actually asked other people if they weren't using theirs. It just allows you to do like intention of the week, 5 most important tasks, secondary tasks of importance. It just is really, really good for the week. And I asked other employees if they weren't using theirs, that I would like it. And I just like the paper feel of it as well. So I went through 3 of those, and then I ran out of them, and I have these extra productivity ones, and they're a little bit different, but I've used these ones for like 5 years as well. So I have these ones, and for 2 weeks I was using it, and just something felt off, and it just I didn't feel like myself. And I was in Austin last week, and I asked our head of people, Carrie, I was like, okay, where do I get these? Because I think the productivity planner is actually the issue. And so I ordered 20 of them. And when I got back on Friday morning, they were there. They're just overnighted, basically. And over the weekend, I spent 2 hours on Sunday just going through and getting my everything like organized and back on track with emails, Slacks, and everything. And it's been a total game changer. Wow. And the reason for that is literally just how it's organized and how it organizes my brain. So if you're struggling out there and you're like getting in a little bit of a slump because you can't get your day-to-day organized, think about something small that might have changed and how can you change it back?
Well, I really like that. That's so interesting.
Just a random small little switch that happens.
So I have shifted to pads like this, like medium-sized pads for everything. And because what I found is you can tear the page off.
If you're listening to this on Spotify or whatever, it's basically like a
pad of paper. It's very like high quality pad of paper because I'm bougie.
No, I think it says Weston on it actually. Even. Go on.
I don't know what it says. But what you can do is, as you're taking notes, you can then tear these pages out and you can kind of like put them and organize. It just helps you like visualize and organize your thoughts a lot better. And I've moved my daily list to paper for the first time in the last couple of years. I still have like a master list of all the shit I need to get done to keep my job. But on the day, what you're trying to do, and those 2-3 things I write down has been quite helpful. My fail is, I should have hired more people in Q4 and I didn't.
Oh, wow. And well, that's because Q4 is usually a tough quarter for you. So you're a little surprised.
Q4 is like generally a quarter where recruitment subdues in December. So we think of it as like the cyclical nature of our business is Q1 is the busiest quarter. Q4 is relatively slower. There's a lot of like strategy and setting up that happens in Q4, but there is a slowdown in December. My problem wasn't that, actually. We had the really busy Q4. So it was a very different type of Q4 for us, where we were working on the 27th and 28th. And it was a different Q4, which was fascinating and different on its own. But even though the signals were there to hire, I think I've always been really obsessed about how do you make people more productive. Since 2020, when I took over, one of my big things was how do you double the productivity of a recruiter? And we did that. We did that before AI. And now I'm obsessed with it again because of AI. And I could see that we would need more hours, but I just didn't want to do it in Q4 for various reasons. And one of them being, I think, this like mindset of let's just do more with what we've got. And in January, we were driving a car at 9 RPM for 4 weeks, and it was intense, and it was amazing, and it was wild, and we'll all tell stories about it. We had the best. I think we did like 1.4 million in revenue.
I don't understand that analogy. You were driving a car at 9 RPM.
Yeah, so we had a great January, right? We did 1.4 million in January.
Wait, like January. Red line? Is that what the idiom is?
9 RPM is when you were driving a car. The RPM
9,000.
Are you sure? Sure.
Yeah, but 9 RPM is like,
but it doesn't RPM. Write 9,000 on an RPM meter. It says 9. You're the technical guy that's multiplying.
Well, yeah, but 9 is rotations per minute, so 9,000.
Who cares, AJ?
So for the Americans out there, he was redlining it.
I was redlining the car. That's the right way to say it. And that's not sustainable. So we've hired 5 new people, which is like hiring 10 new people a few years ago. And I'm very excited about them coming on. But my partner even had said, hire people. You need to hire people. And I didn't. And that was a mistake. And I have learned that you should listen to your partner, probably.
Grow at all costs. That's what Asad's saying. He's back in the seat. No, I do like that. Given the the challenges when you were just thinking about it, you're kind of going against the grain and having to make a choice. So, good one. Well, from the 2 greatest co-hosts of Topline in the world, 66%. Well, one of us is at least one of us is in the top 66%. I won't say which one.
We're on the podium.
One of us is there. Yeah, all 3 of us are on the podium. One of us is the top 66%. It's been a pleasure. I'm AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath, Asad Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency. Thank you all for listening.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.